What's up, party people? My name is Sunny Ray. This is Sunny Ray Show. I believe this will be our fourth interview today. My next guest, his name is Jonathan Lowenhar. He's the co-founder and managing partner of Enjoy the Work, a San Francisco-based founder advisory firm built around one question he could not get answered. How does a founder become a great CEO? With that said, I'm going to bring Jonathan on stage. How you doing, Jonathan?
Sunny, I'm great.
Awesome. So you said you're calling in from San Francisco, right? Or the Bay Area?
Yeah. So I lived in San Francisco a long time, a handful of years ago in the middle of the pandemic. My wife and I did what a lot of people did, was escape the city and move to a little suburb. So we live in this tiny town called Brisbane, California, 10 minutes south of San Francisco. It's like 5,000 of us, but instead of living in San Francisco, where right now it's like cold and windy, we live in California and it's sunny and beautiful. And I have a yard and my dog gets to play outside.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. So take us into the deep end. What is Enjoy the Work? Why should our listener care? I do have a lot of founders and maybe soon to be founders and CEOs that are in the audience.
Yeah,
Kick us off
entrepreneurs,
there.
operators, entrepreneurs, founders, operators of all sorts. There's this thing that I discovered a long time ago that feels kind of obvious in retrospect. And that is when you start your own company, as you clearly have, you do it for a bunch of reasons. Like you feel called to like go solve something, some problem you want to solve, but also like you don't want a boss, right? Like you also want total agency. The thing that no one tells you, certainly not me at the time, is like that first step is like you're an inventor. Your job is to go like birth something, create something from scratch. But then if that thing starts to work, like the market, gives a shit about what you've just tried to sell and the product kind of works, your job just changed. You're no longer an inventor. You now have to go build a company around the invention. And what I got obsessed about, 11 years ago, after a lengthy operating career, like I ran $1 billion division for a large public company. Then I was a PE CEO, and then did back-to-back startups. And the second one, did very well and sold for a lot of money. All those stops, what they ended up convincing me of is like, there's this giant difference between being an inventor and being an operator. And I just have gone into the deep end of like, what does it mean to be a great operator?
I love that.
Ask me whatever you want.
I know. I love that. No, guys, that's such an interesting topic, and really, I mean, I meet a lot of CEOs, but rarely do I meet someone who helps people become a better CEO. So that's super fascinating. You were the first VP of loyalty marketing, right? At Harrah's, is it? Is that how you pronounce it?
Harrah's, yeah. That was my casino life. That was career number one for me.
Yeah, and I guess running with casino math on human behavior. Like, what did casinos teach you about retention that I guess startups still get wrong?
I'm not sure about the latter, but let me play with that for a minute. So if you go back decades, the first loyalty programs really started in airlines, right? You fly a mile, get a mile, earn enough miles, get a free flight. The second major push in retention math started in casinos. Use a card, gamble a bunch, have the theoretical value of what you would have gambled start to calculate amount of loyalty give back, like the idea of like you get some reimbursement back, and that was delivered back to you in food and beverage and hotels. And that was my expertise. And what the intellectual pursuit, the question was, could you very quickly predict who would be a good customer? Like immediately. So as an example, have you ever sat in front of a slot machine in your life, even for a minute?
Yeah, of course.
Sure. So two different people sitting at a slot machine, they both put $100 in, they both lose $100. Then the curiosity was like, is one have the potential to be a much bigger gambler than the other? Can you predict that? What is predictive of a great customer? Okay. All of this predates internet and online and automated A/B testing and all the tools that have made this incredibly easy and vogue for all of e-commerce, but none of that existed at the time. The kinds of things we learned was that it wasn't always obvious what became predictive of a great customer. And so the ideal customer profile for us in my casino days was an evolving piece of work until we figured it out. And so like, if there is a lesson now that I'm stream of consciousness, your answer is the staying flexible as to who your ideal customer is, what are the indicators of that, and what actually you should be measuring in their behavior to see if you are closing the gap between their potential and reality matters. So back to that example of two customers sitting next to each other, both losing $100. What we learned is if one person put in 520s and another person put in a $100 bill, the $100 bill person was going to be a bigger customer over time. Second, we learned that the speed at which they played, if one person was like hitting the handle, hitting the handle, hitting the handle, they blasted through the 100 in a minute. The other person played it for an hour. The person who blasted through a minute was going to be a much bigger gambler over time. So the actual value that the customers created was equal. They both lost $100. The potential value of the customer who played in higher denominations at higher speed, and there were other indicators as well, by the way, like the radius with which they lived from that casino, their age, their gender. These things were actually more predictive of a certain customer over another. What we then could learn is two customers lost $100, but one of them I should treat like they drive a Rolls Royce, and the other one is not. The startup lesson is, what are the underlying indicators of a great customer? And before they've even become one, treat them that way.
Oh wow, okay, interesting. Interesting. You led the turnaround of a 3,000 person hotel, right? And the casino company. What's the first thing you fix in a kind of a distressed business?
Yeah, so I was a turnaround to CEO. We were 4 hotels, 3 casinos, 13 restaurants, golf courses, a whole bunch of real estate. It was a rather large operation, and the company was cash flow negative. So the very first thing you start with in that kind of exercise is you look at expense first over revenue. And so this might sound overly simplistic, but you walk the business. You go look for where there are examples of bloat. And there are lots, you can do this in lots of different companies. This isn't unique to a hotel operation, but I would just walk by the front desk during unusual hours. I would walk the halls of where housekeeping was, and you just get a feel for, are people standing around me? You'd walk the casino floor and see how many employees are there. And what you started to realize very quickly was there was no math that was matching labor and demand. Okay, that's a solvable problem. Can we track demand over time? Can we align resources against it? So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did is the values or culture of the business was broken. What people cared most about were the other employees. They absolutely didn't care about the customers. So we had a reorientation around North Star metrics and the type of metrics we cared about that were all now angled towards whether the customer was happy. And then we separated the employees by those folks that could perform against those metrics and those couldn't. I'll make this less abstract. The speed with which you can check someone in, the accuracy with which you can check someone out, the NPS score or qualitative score on how clean was your room, the whether or not, like if you've ever finished gambling and you have your chips and you want to go to the casino cage and turn it into real human money again, was that fast and efficient? There were all of these things we could measure that were very clear indicators of whether or not our customer was going to be happy. The thesis being, if they were, the likelihood that they would tell other people and come back was higher. So I ripped a whole lot of expense out of the business. The company went from 3,500 employees to 2,700 employees in the matter of about 6 months. We reoriented around values that were customer facing. We oriented around metrics that were customer facing. And within 12 months, we were cash flow positive.
That's a great job.
Thanks.
And
It was fun.
I like how you just can break it down and yeah, it's simple when you mention it, but obviously it's probably not so simple when you're in the thick of it. In 2007, you left the corporate track to found your own startup. Like what surprised you most about being the founder instead of, the operator?
So yes, I moved to the Bay Area full-time in 2007 after I left my last casino gig. And I wandered a little bit alone in the desert for a year, trying to figure out, like, what did I want to do next? I no longer wanted to work in the casino hotel business. I was living in San Francisco. It's not exactly a career that transfers well to the Bay Area. It's not like there are big, interesting hospitality businesses here. And I was suddenly in an industry town. Like, I left an industry town. I lived in Las Vegas and I joined a different industry town, but it's one I didn't know anything about. So I started to apply for COO and CMO jobs at startups, Sonny, and no one would hire me. Like I kept getting late in the cycle for these, and I'd be like one of the final candidates, and I kept hearing the same spiel from the CEO or the board. Your background's really interesting. You clearly have these kind of skills, but I have this other candidate who's done this job before. Like, shit, like the world is telling me something. So I had also been at the same time kind of giving away my time for either tiny money or no money or equity only, consulting here, advising here, board work here. And one of them was a 2-person startup that was trying to do an analytics play in the hospitality space. Well, I know a lot about analytics because of my loyalty background. I know a lot about hospitality because of my background. And I joined as an advisor, and we got along so damn well. They asked if I would join as co-founder CEO when the business at the time was a prototype, no customers, 180,000 of seed capital. So CEO sounded all sorts of lofty, but Jesus, like, you know, we were really vaporware. I loved it, but it was also an incredibly intimidating jump because I went from companies where I had lots of resources, lots of capacity to delegate and organize, lots of metrics, lots of data, where everything was unknown, everything felt hard. We had no credibility yet. And so getting customer 1, 2, 3, 4 was not something I'd ever done before. And that was by far the hardest leap. Can I get clear on their pain, the thing that we do to solve the pain? Can I de-risk it enough that they'll take a shot at me? Will they sign it up? Can the first version of the product create enough value that they'll stick around while we make sure the parts that are smoking or breaking get fixed? Can we get enough patience from them, or they have enough pain that they're willing to be patient? Those were the hardest steps. The irony is, for my background, because I came from big and medium operating roles to tiny, the bigger that company got, the easier it became for me to run because I knew what I was doing. For most founders I encounter, it's the opposite that's true. When it's 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of them, and they're like in founder mode, they know what they're doing. Suddenly they have to build leadership team, set goals and comm structures, and manage a board. And how do you actually manage people who are more expert in their area than you? For most of the founders I work with, that's actually the harder leap for them because they didn't have my operating background.
And then you sold that first company right after 4 years. What did the exit teach you that no advisor had kind of told you beforehand?
Oh man, I made so many of the mistakes that founders make. I mean, it was a long time ago, and I had a version of me in my life at the time for a period of it, and it's part of what stayed with me and ended up being in a lot of ways the inspiration for Enjoy the Work. But I didn't have someone like me or one of my partners in my life every day. And so the whole bunch of mistakes I made. In the first example, I'd say the biggest mistake I made is assuming that a verbal yes on a deal has a high likelihood of actually getting to a closed transaction. When in fact, for M&A, I would say it's probably less than 1 in 3. Verbal to close on a customer funnel, on a recruiting funnel, maybe a fundraising funnel, probably a higher level than that. But on M&A, it's way lower. What I also didn't have mastery of at the time was the 5 players that get involved in material M&A. What we now understand as the champion, the blocker, the advocate, the buyer, and then corp dev as the 5th entity out in the background. And that you need the champion to help you maneuver through the political quagmire and what at the time for us was a large public company who was thinking about buying us the first time. But you need to be able to convince the buyer of the business case. You need to use the advocates to like gather enough intel so that you know what the hell you're talking about in terms of how this company is putting you through a process. And you need to be able to navigate the blockers, the people who can say no to a deal but can't say yes, like OPSEC and legal and procurement, what have you. All while understanding that corp dev doesn't care about you at all, no matter how silky, smooth, charismatic they are. They just care about the transaction. And I didn't understand, Sonny, any of that. I didn't understand the players, their archetype, their motivations, how to navigate them all. I just heard from our champion, we're going to do this deal. And I'm like, I'm home. We're there. Generational wealth is here. And that deal utterly fell apart because we didn't have the buyers buy in at all. And so that deal fell apart. We had 6 months of capital left. We were an inch from getting to profitability. We had lost the confidence of our investors and our board disbanded. And we doubled down. And this was a lot of the work of one of my co-founders as well at the time, where we managed to extend runway, raised a tiny bit more capital, and got to a different exit with someone else 8 months later. That was still a positive outcome for us. I didn't make much money. Like I jokingly refer to it as I made $7 in a bag of potato chips, but we got to a decent outcome. And that next time we didn't let it go until there was a signature in front of us and we understood who all the people were.
That's really interesting. And then I guess to keep moving forward, as COO of, is it Talia? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I was president of Italia. This was like I joined in 2012.
And you went seed to Series D in under 3 years. I mean, what I guess broke along the way, and what did you personally have to kind of become to fix it?
So when I got to Talia, it was seed stage, move into A. And the company was founded by 4 founders who knew each other really well. And the product was brilliant and the ambition was gigantic. They wanted to utterly change the way supply chain finance works in the world. I won't bore your audience with that esoteric corner of fintech. But suffice to say that we were going to make big companies and small companies a lot more money while screwing banks. And it was a very exciting endeavor and it was working. The product worked. But nothing else about the business beyond the product really worked. We didn't have a repeatable motion for meeting our customer or deploying our customer. We didn't have repeatable internal processes in terms of metrics and culture and hiring and keeping people. Turnover when I got there was like more than 30%. So it meant like we were losing a third of the team each year. Like so much of the company was young. And so I was brought in. And Sonny, I'm not kind of exaggerating too much here. I couldn't even spell the phrase supply chain finance when I got there. That's not why I was brought in. I was brought in because we had this great product and great opportunity without a repeatable business. And so I got there when we were 200,000 in revenue. And when I left, we were 20 million in revenue. And when I got there, we had raised 4 or 5 million. And by the time I left, we had raised 100 million in capital. And the company went on to continue to grow and grow and grow after I left, and eventually got acquired by SAP for just over $900 million.
Oh, wow.
It was a
That's
good
impressive.
outcome.
Yeah. Can you just to, I guess, switch gears? Can you explain enjoy the work, like the model, to a founder who's never heard of it, and who is it for, and what you actually do week to week, and what you say no to?
Yeah. So let me try and be succinct here. Like inspiration, who's it for? What do we do? So this notion of there's this difference between being an inventor, which is just a choice, and being a great operator, which means you've accumulated a whole lot of skills. And we think of those skills, Sonny, as in 3 buckets. Like there's general management skills. Like, do I know how to run a company? Financial planning, communication, hiring, talent management, board management, raising capital. These skills are utterly independent of the conceit of the business. I don't care if you're med tech or hard tech or e-commerce. Like you have to know those things to run a company so that eventually more cash comes in than goes out of the business. Then we talk about functional management skills. Do I understand what great looks like in legal, in HR, in growth, in marketing, in sales, in product and eng? Do I know how to hire great humans? And can I be conversant enough in each area so I can manage someone in an area where they know more about their area than I ever will? And then the third bucket we call self-management. Can I be a good human, a good leader? Can I create psychological safety? Can I handle conflict? Can I take care of myself? Can I take care of others? Accountability and self-care. Every time I would encounter a founder, it became very clear that at their stage of company life, seed stage or Series A or Series B or growth, if you put them through a lens of those 3 buckets, what I started to realize is that everyone had holes in their game. There was always a gap between the CEO you are and the one you could be that your stage company needs. And so what I got obsessed about was, how do you close the gap? Because you're busy running the company. So it's not like you're going to school for 2 years. By the way, you can't ask your venture investors, because that's not safe. Hey, there are these parts of the job I don't know how to do. Like, good luck keeping your job then. You can't ask your board. It's hard to admit to employees. Most people have a partner or a spouse that can't help you in this regard. So like, how do you learn? Because the traditional advisor, or a coach for that matter, the traditional advisor is just someone who shows up for coffee once a month and says something that's strategy or strategy adjacent. That's not the same thing as training you on a skill. And traditional coaches are therapists by a different name. And I didn't want any of that. Like, that's not the problem I was trying to solve. The problem I was trying to solve is there was a hard skills gap for most of the CEOs I was meeting. It didn't mean that they weren't good at the job. It means they could be way better. And one of the most frustrating things that I witness in startup life is the competent growth mindset CEO who doesn't have access to education in this regard. They grow a business in an interesting way. The company starts to hit escape velocity, which means that CEO no longer has control of board or cap table. Because if it hits escape velocity, they probably raised a lot of money.
Hey, Jonathan, can you go for another 15, or do you have a hard stop in 1 minute?
I have a hard stop in 10.
10. Okay, let's keep rolling then. I only have 3 or 4 more questions. Okay, cool. I like
So
that.
let me answer the second part of
keep
your
going.
question.
Yeah, keep going.
So founders who work with us, we show up in one of 2 ways, man. We have one-to-many programming. We do boot camps and workshops. Like November, I'm going to try and get these dates right. Like November 15th and the 16th. And November 15th and 16th, we're doing a CEO boot camp, startup CEO boot camp in San Francisco. Like December 1st and 2nd, we're doing a virtual one. In January, we're doing one in Miami. We do these all around the world. We've done them in Glasgow and Ottawa and Montreal. One of my partners was in Nairobi yesterday. So we do these training programs either that are an hour long or 2 days long. In addition to that, we do one-on-one work, where longitudinally over a bunch of years, we meet with our founders 3 or 4 times every month. We're in Slack with them every day. We're running offsites. We're interviewing talent. We're teaching people how to build a financial model. There's no set form in which we play with. Wherever the founder needs skills, like, we jump in. Let me stop there, Sonny. I did a lot of caffeinated talking.
Yeah, okay. So, no, anything else on that point? Like in terms of, I guess, what you guys do? No, I did have another question. I was going to ask you. So you called the founder mode debate a dangerous kind of like red herring, right? So
Yes.
I was curious to ask you why, and what should founders be arguing about instead?
The red herring is because I felt like that initial post from Paul Graham was giving founders an excuse to never learn how to be a leader or a manager. And that's bullshit. And maybe that wasn't the intention, but that is how I read it. And one of the greatest things a CEO can do, even at early stage, is find leverage in how they're running the business. Is find ways to say, this part of the company, I don't need to do anymore. What the language we use often is, we want our CEOs to only do what only they can do. So how quickly can we stand up a capable set of talent underneath that person, build repeatable capabilities for acquiring customer, deploying them, thrilling them, shipping product, so that the CEO then, who is, in our point of view, queen of the chessboard, they can make every move, but we can be really surgical about those moves. Oh, this is the current primary constraint of the business. This is the current friction point of the business. I want to be able, the CEO, to be able to put on blinders and just dive deep into that, because that's what founder mode is best used for. Not that they are command and control, hub and spoke, every decision comes through them, everything needs their hands on it. And the initial founder mode rhetoric was almost suggesting to me that the founder mode that was being celebrated, revered, was that all decisions and all actions drive through the founder. And that is fucking insane and a terrible way to run a business. And it's a great way to create yes people around you and have people eventually quit.
Yeah, that's super interesting and insightful. Your GTM framework has 4 elements: ICP, positioning, demand generation, and a repeatable close. Where do most startups actually break?
Well, they break at the start. They break at ICP more often than not, especially for first time CEOs. The metaphor I often use is you have someone in their early 20s who gets to go to a bar for like the first time in their life. Like they've lived a kind of sheltered life and they're finally in a bar for the first time ever. That person will kind of talk to anyone that makes eye contact with them. Like they are not a discriminating audience. They're in a bar for the first time in their life. Someone winks at them from across the room, they are running over to go talk to them. And that's what first time CEOs are like with potential customers. Anyone who makes eye contact with them, they are trying to close. They are trying to get a signature, even if that customer is a bad fit for them. And so what often happens is that first time CEO who has all sorts of charisma, all sorts of sales ability, and tons of passion for the problem, they win a whole bunch of customers, Sonny, and they win a bunch of customers that have no chance to be great initial references because they're not actually ideal. Because ideal means they'll say yes and they'll be a great customer. And it's that second part most first time founders ignore when they try and develop a targeting system, an ideal customer profile.
Got it. And AI is compressing what an early team needs to be, right? And how does that change what a first time CEO has to be good at?
So I have a rather contrarian view on this. I don't actually believe that AI is changing the job of the CEO. I think the CEO still has just 3 priorities. And AI is just a tool that shifts a bit how you go about them. Priority number 1, what's the mountain we're climbing and why? Number 2, who are the people on the team I'm climbing the mountain with? Number 3, make sure those people have the tools necessary to climb the fucking mountain. So is AI a tool that helps with those? Sure, I'll buy that. Does it change the job of the CEO? Maybe. Like it certainly makes some things way more efficient. There's a future in which you're going to have a CEO, a real digital twin of your own business, so that there is your Tony Stark and there's Jarvis, and you're going to have access to information that's faster than ever before. But your 3 critical priorities of mountain, team, resources has not changed. And that as the motion of that business starts to work, your ability in founder mode, going back to that thread of diving deep into a specific topic, if anything, AI has made that excavation faster, but I don't think your job has changed.
Yeah, that's so true. I love that. Yeah, it really resonates. Hey, Jonathan, Lenny's podcast. Sorry, I had a few more. If it's okay, you said you got 10 minutes. 4 more, so we'll keep
Yeah,
going here.
4 more minutes.
I'm going to
Let's
use
do
every
it.
minute. Lenny's podcast, but you're thinking in front of a huge founder audience. What has content done for the firm that referrals alone couldn't?
What has content done for referrals alone couldn't? So we have probably 50 or 60 venture firms around the world, Sonny, who think really highly of our work. We have north of 300 founders that we've worked with now for the last 10 or 11 years that think really highly of our work. And when you put those 2 populations together, that is not even a speed bump on the larger population of founders across the planet. It's a tiny, tiny fraction. And it's a very bubbly fraction because so much of our community historically was centered around like 3 or 4 different cities, and that was it. And so my curiosity was like, the impact I want to have, my partners want to have, is like, how can we help as many founders as possible? And so we decided to invest into 2 things. One is let's put a lot of our content out into the world. And if no one ever works with us, but they follow our subreddit, Founder to CEO, or they watch our founder to CEO YouTube shorts, or they read all of our content on LinkedIn or our blogs on our website, and they get value out of that, freaking great. The world's better off. I'm happy. But in addition to that, we started to launch all these one-to-many programs. Another revenue source for me, admittedly, boot camps and workshops that we're doing, both on our own and in collaboration with other parties. And by having our content out there, when folks were evaluating, like, hey, we want to bring in a speaker or a trainer or a coach for this AGM or for this 2-day program or for this startup conference we're doing, man, it made it easier for people to find us. And inbound is wonderful.
And last one, what question should a founder ask themselves every quarter to know whether they're still the right CEO for the company?
Well, I think I encourage our founders to always be challenging themselves on 2 dimensions. And one is there's a set of milestones they know have to be true about their business next. Like if they're going from seed to A, they're going from like first evidence that their product works to trying to find a repeatable model. So the first question I want them to ask themselves is, what has to be true in that example to get to a repeatable model? What has to be true to get to next milestone? But then the second thing I would encourage them to ask is, what skills don't I have? What skills do I need to improve given the milestones I care about for the business? One of my companies is pre-seed. They're trying to close first customers now. The CEO has never been in sales. And our milestone is first customers closed. But she has actually never done high-ticket enterprise selling before. It's a perfect match. We know the milestone. I know what skills she has to get better at. And so both were working on the business, ICP, demand gen, build pipeline, get folks in a funnel, figure out what initial sales motion is. But we're also working directly on her sales skills. How do you run first meeting? How do you overcome objections? How do you make sure you pivot from meeting 1 to pivot 2? So I always encourage founders to ask the 2 questions about themselves.
I've already gone over 10 minutes. Jonathan, hang up for 1 minute. I'm going to bring this to an end. Where do people find out more about Enjoy the Work?
Easiest way to do it is enjoythework.com. You see the name of my t-shirt.
Yep.
Come learn about us. Follow us on Reddit, founder to CEO, and our subreddit.
Hang on for 30 seconds. There's a bunch of people listening live. Thank you all. Really, really appreciate everyone. And yeah, until next time. Cheers.